What up guys, Super Metal 983 here to bring us another Super Metal recommendations, and this is episode 9, and I know it's not been too long since we last Super Metal recommendations, but honestly these 5 releases have just been on repeat so much, I thought, you know what, I might as well do a Super Metal recommendations for you, because I enjoy doing them, and I hope you do too. Now, the first release we're going to be talking about is going to be a deathcore release, so if you're into deathcore, I definitely recommend you check this release out. And this has grown into becoming one of my favourite EPs in the genre, but I definitely suggest if you're into beatdown deathcore, then this is definitely for you. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about Carbine with their debut EP, Cold Blooded. Now, this EP came out in 2016, and since then, I have grown to absolutely adore this EP. It's become one of my favourite EPs in general. I've listened to it probably about 20 or 30 times since it was released, and every time I still get blown away by it. I love the pummelingness of the riffs, the angriness, the pissed offness, but in general I think it's just a all-out fun and enjoyable release, especially if you're in beatdown and deathcore, which I am. I have to say that one of my other favourite factors about this EP is from track 1 to track 5, it's sort of in a similar sort of production, very thick, very beefy sounding, but it's absolutely pummeling to listen to. But then you get the 6th track, which is called Lead Those Who Follow, which was their debut single that they dropped, with Luke Griffin doing some guest vocals. Obviously, everyone knows Luke Griffin from Archetype, Human Error, and Scribe of Existence. If you haven't checked out those bands, definitely do so anyway. But that track has a kind of more old school sort of production, a bit more of a rawer production than the cleaned up sound that they went for on the first 5 tracks, but I definitely think it adds a lot more to the EP itself. I think it kind of breaks it up quite nicely. Obviously, the pummelingness that you feel from the first 5 tracks, and then going into a bit more of a little bit ease back, but it's still barbaric and very in your face and aggressive. It really adds to it, if you ask me, and gives it kind of like a bonus track sort of feel, but I do really enjoy that. But yeah, other than that, make sure you check out the song Violation and also Without a Fight. Violation features Alex Tian from Black Tongue, and Without a Fight features Matt Jones of Martyr Defiled. Rest in peace, Martyr Defiled. But yeah, make sure you check out Cold Blood by Carbine. It is one of the most pulverizing and devastating beatdown deathcore releases, and just so enjoyable to listen to. So if you're into that sort of stuff, definitely check these guys out. Excellent stuff. I know they're on hiatus at the moment and they keep doing one-off shows, but I hope that they reform one day soon and do a follow-up EP to that, because that is outstanding, if you ask me. Next up, I'm going to be talking about some brutal death metal. Now, I don't normally talk about brutal death metal on this channel. I do love it. You've seen us showcase loads of brutal death metal in updates and purchases and what have you, but I don't really go out my way to do videos like CD reviews and stuff like that on this channel, and I probably should, but you know. But recently I've been really getting into brutal death metal, and one album that has definitely stuck with me a lot over the past, let's say, 2 weeks that I've been into it has been this album. I'm talking about Cenotaph with their latest album called Perverse, Dehumanized, Dysfunction. Now, this came out last year, and I didn't give it much of the light idea, but every time I heard it, I was mesmerised by how brutal and pulverising it was in general. But when I did my first order through Rotten Music, which I've talked about quite a bit on this channel, one of the first orders and one of the first CDs I added to me, basket, cart, whatever you want to call it, was Cenotaph's Perverse, Dehumanized, Dysfunctions. And I was so excited when it came in. It was one of the first one. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, the first one I stuck on when I got the package, and I was once again floored by it. And it's been on repeat a lot recently. And quite frankly, I think this is one of the most fast, pulverizingly brutal releases in brutal death metal that I've heard in a long time. It's so catchy and so enjoyable to listen to, and not to mention the bass work that is on this album from Anton, I can't remember his name, from Backdoor to Asylum and Neurogenic, I think is his other band. His bass work on this album is just insane. He is called Insane Death Machine for a reason. He is an absolute bass monster, and quite frankly, his bass work on this is just outstanding, as I couldn't expect if anything's got him on. I expect it to be fast and brutal, and quite frankly, it is. So, if you want some really solid, brutal death metal, check out Cenotaph with Perverse, Dehumanized, Dysfunctions. Yeah, Turkish brutality right here. It's excellent, excellent stuff. So, check it out if you haven't already. Highly recommended. Next up, we're going to be talking about an album that I feel doesn't get the appreciation that it deserves. I mean, when people think of this band, they think of their debut EP and their second EP. But I don't see many people talking about this album, and if people do talk about them, it's in a small amount, but it's in high praise, should we just say. And quite frankly, I think that is shocking, if you ask me. I'm talking about Black Tongue with their debut album, The Unconquerable Dark. Now, obviously, everyone knows the Falsifier EP and the Born Hanged EP. Obviously, Falsifier, more of a sludgier sort of down-tempo sound, but that was outright the birth of the down-tempo sound. But then you've got their Born Hanged EP, which was the more straight-up down-tempo sound that they pretty much created. Heavy, pulverizing, low tune, and just all-out devastating brutality. It is nothing short of simple, heavy, beefy riffs that you can't fathom it. It is just outstanding, if you ask me. It's still one of my favourite EPs, that one, but yeah, it's still on my want list. Hopefully they repress it at some point in the upcoming future, because I definitely need that. I do have Falsifier on a cardboard sleeve signed by the entire band, but Born Hanged I need to pick up. But anyway, when they dropped this debut album, I feel personally that when it dropped, people didn't really talk or hype up about it as much as I think they should have, because quite frankly, I think this is outstandingly good and up there with their other releases. It should be talked about, because not only does this obviously have the sludgy vibes, the down-tempo vibes, the deathcore and the doom metal vibes on there, but one of my favourite elements to this album is the black metal elements, or the black and death metal sort of elements that they have added to their overall sound and created something different. This is a different beast compared to Born Hanged and Falsifier. This is just, it's very atmospheric in some elements, but it's dark, it's sinister, it's evil, it's creepy, and just all out a lurking kind of release. It's just filthy and putrid, and quite frankly, as I said, all the elements, the sludgy elements are just putrid. The black metal elements are dark, but the doom metal elements create the atmosphere. And then obviously, just to remind you that they are still fucking Black Tongue, they shove in those down-tempo breakdowns just to punch you right in the fucking face. And quite frankly, it is all there. All those elements combine into this release, and quite frankly, I think people need to wake up and listen to this album a lot more, because quite frankly, I mean, the French song, which is the fourth one, I can't remember how to pronounce it off the top of my head, I just know it translates to The Call of the Void, but Plague Worship, In the Wake of the Wolf, Vermintide featuring Eddie Hamida. Oh, that high vocal from Eddie, oh, it just feels just so, dirty. It just feels dirty. And then Appeal Procession Part 2, Death March. Is it Death March? Yeah, Death March. Wow, what an experience this album is. It's loud, it's heavy, and just all out devastating. Just hear it, and I cannot wait. I saw them with Suicide Silence all those years ago, and they hadn't released this album yet, so hopefully they play a couple of songs from this album when I see them at Fall in the Brawl, because quite frankly, I know it's just going to be an absolute mayhem fest at that gig. Anyway, moving on, I'm going to take a quick drink. But next up, we have some black metal, and some progressive black metal at that. And I'm going to be talking about Borknagar with Winter Thrice. Now, Winter Thrice, in my opinion, was an album that I am ashamed, and one of the albums, along with most other ones that I've mentioned in the Super Metal recommendations over these past 9 episodes, there's always been an album that's kind of been mentioned that I wish I put that in my top albums. This is definitely one of them, because quite frankly, this album was an album that every time I listened to it, it was like, oh, this is a 10 out of 10 album, this is a 10 out of 10 album. But I never seemed to come back to it. I've always left it so long to come back to it. And quite frankly, if I give it just a couple more listen, it would have been up there in the top 10. Because this is easily one of the most majestic and beautiful albums I have heard in a long fucking time. The musicianship is something to be in awe of, if you ask me. Every musician on this album kills it. From the drums, to the bass, to the guitar, to the synth, to the vocals, to the overall musicianship and songwriting. Everything, every element is something to behold on this album. It's beautiful, it's chilling, and quite frankly, it's filled with so much monolithicness that it is just something to bask in. And quite frankly, that is what Borknagar was, in my opinion, needs to make you feel. I mean, Erd, I believe the album was, Erd, I wasn't massively overwhelmed with that album. It was a good album, but it didn't have a wow factor, whereas this, if you listen to it, you will go, wow. Guaranteed. There is no minimum guarantee. Sorry, there is a maximum guarantee that you will be in awe listening to this. It is amazing, and the songwriting is just something to behold. So make sure you check out Borknagar with the Winter Thrice. God damn, I wish I put that in my top albums. I feel ashamed, I really do. But anyway, now we get to the final album that we're going to be talking about. And quite frankly, this album is something that, in my last episode, I talked about Soulfly's Enslaved as being an album that I found on my shelf that I thought, oh wow, I haven't actually talked about that one on my channel, and I wanted to, because quite frankly, when I first started these, episodes, I wanted to talk about albums that I felt either were underappreciated, not talked about, or even just vastly underrated in general. And Soulfly, when I was looking through my collection, I caught my eye on that album, and quite frankly, I was like, yeah, I need to mention that in Super Metal Recommendation. So I thought I'd do the same sort of thing with this episode. And as I was basking through my collection, there was a couple of albums that caught my eye. But there was one album that caught my eye in particular that I thought, that is the perfect album that I'm going to be talking about in my next episode. And I caught my eye on Archetype by Fear Factory. Now, Fear Factory are definitely an underappreciated band, and not very talked about these days. Obviously, back in the 90s, early 2000s, they were pretty hyped up. But quite frankly, they don't get talked about all that much. And for me, anyway, when I first got introduced to the band, I was going on summer holiday, and I had a Walkman. You're going back there. And I was given 2 albums by my brother, my older brother that is, to listen to while I was on holiday. And it was these 2 albums, Demanufacture and Digimortal. I never actually got round to listening to Demanufacture, shamefully. I know it's a classic album, but I never actually listened to it in general, so apologies about that. I need to, I really do. But Digimortal was where I first begun, and I first heard that album in full, and I was blown away by it. And quite frankly, Linchpin and Damage were in awe. I was in awe of those songs, the grooviness and the industrial vibes. I absolutely loved it. But I did start to familiarise myself a little bit more with their modern discography a little bit later, like Mechanized, for example. And then the Industrials came out, and then Genexus, and I did enjoy those albums a little bit, but Genexus out of the 3 was personally my favourite. But then I decided to go back through their discography a little bit, and I listened to the likes of Obsolete and Souls of a New Machine, I think it was called, the debut album. But then I decided to check out one album, because I was watching a Roadrunner DVD of like old music videos and stuff. And one of the songs that was on there was Cyberwaste by Fear Factory, and I was literally in awe listening to that, because it felt like a different Fear Factory. I was like, this feels different, and I looked it up, and it turned out it was one of the only albums without Dino Cazares on guitar. And quite frankly, I know when people think of Fear Factory, they think of Burton and Cazares, them 2 together as one. But I think personally, when it comes to Fear Factory, their best album was Archetype. I think the riffs just have, have a lot more attack going through it, and a lot more energy behind it. It feels a lot more aggressive in the songwriting. But then, The guitar work, what's his name, Christian, who used to be the bassist at the time, moved on to guitar for this album. His right hand attack was just vicious and full of aggression. But then, I think his name is Gene, the old drummer of Fear Factory. His footwork was airtight with Christian's right hand, and oh my god, it was something to behold, if you ask me. It just felt like a lot more, it felt like a new Fear Factory at the time for me, and it was something that I've never heard a Fear Factory like this, and quite frankly, I don't think I ever will, because this album is definitely my favourite Fear Factory album. And then, one other element that I definitely feel like Fear Factory kind of suffers from a little bit is the vocals definitely don't have a lot of emotion behind them. I feel like they are good, they are well executed, but I don't believe what they are saying and stuff like that. So I think the harsh vocals lack a bit of effort sometimes, and definitely the cleans definitely lack something. But on this album, I feel like the clean vocals definitely have a lot more emotion, and you believe a lot more what the Burton's saying on this. But I feel like the screams, and the harsher vocals definitely have a lot more emotion and attack going from that. There's something to prove with it. But overall, and the industrial vibes are definitely not overwhelming on this album, definitely, I'd say. And I definitely feel like all those elements definitely combine and make this album just what it is, and definitely my favourite Fear Factory album. So if someone was to turn around to me, I know that'll probably never happen these days, but if someone said, oh, I fancy checking out Fear Factory, which album should I check out? Every time, hands down, I'd say Archetype. Fuck Demanufacturer, seriously, because Archetype is where it's at. I think this album is absolutely outstanding. If you disagree, then disagree, but I definitely feel like Demanufacturer definitely made it stable, but I think Archetype molded it and made it a beast, if you ask me. So yeah, there's 5 albums for you to check out, and I've started to figure out what is wrong with my camera, so I've turned autofocus off, because for some reason it was acting up. But yeah, so it hasn't gone blurry much, some little twinges here and there, but yeah, in general it's worked, so hopefully it stays like this for the upcoming future. But yeah, there's 5 releases for you to check out: Carbine, Cenotaph, Black Tongue, Borknagar, and Fear Factory. Definitely check out all those releases. All the links are down below of where you can check them out, and obviously links down below to a track or even an album stream down below as well for you to check out. So yeah, I'll see you until the next video. Remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.